Welcome to Industry Insights with Route Consultant, your front row seat to the fast-moving world of logistics and beyond. Each week, we bring you game-changing insights, real-world strategies, and fresh perspectives to fuel smarter investments and build stronger businesses. Join us as we sit down with expert guests to explore emerging trends and pressing topics across a wide range of industries. This is Industry Insights.
Everyone, thanks for joining. Welcome to Industry Insights Live. For those of you that have followed us for a long time, or maybe have just followed us recently, we used to do these live releases all the time, but we've adopted a little bit of a different style over the last year or two, where you're seeing some of those in-studio releases every week. But we do still think there's a lot of need and a lot of value in coming on here live. So you'll start to see a couple of these recurring touch points throughout the year, where we're going to be on here, we're going to answer questions, and give updates on the industry. I do see a hand raised. In general, for this webinar, if you have questions, use the Q&A button at the bottom of the window. If you don't see the Q&A button, because the last time I did this, Zoom made it disappear. The Q&A button, if you might have to go to the more with the three dots, and the Q&A button should be there. But if you're trying to ask questions, that's the place to put them. If for some reason you can't find it, I'll still check the chat, because last time Zoom was causing all kinds of problems. So I'll look for your questions wherever they come. If you raise your hand, I won't be able to answer, but if you put it in the Q&A or the chat, I'll make sure to answer your questions as we're going through today. If you're here for the first time or you haven't met us before, my name is Josh Gregory, and I'm the Vice President of Operations here at Route Consultant. Our team ran hundreds of routes across the country in both P&D and Linehaul, and today we're really here to help new buyers who are looking to get into the space for the first time, and to help current contractors find efficiencies and additional profitability in their business. And I'm joined here by Alex Frum. Many of you know him already, but Alex is a Linehaul contractor with runs across the country and a wealth of experience in the industry. So he is here as well, as always, to bring us his knowledge. So Alex, if you just want to go ahead and say hello.
Hello, everyone, and I'm glad to be back. It's been a while.
Yeah, but it's good to have you. It's good to be here. And we actually convinced Alex to be in the office today, but he was doing it for his own reasons, but we just hijacked him and had him here in one of our separate rooms in the office. And I'm sure he'll get into a little bit of that when he's talking about how what growth and expansion looks like for him. As I said today, though, Q&A, I'm going to be going through questions that I have that we pulled out on Facebook. I've seen a lot of questions come in over the last couple of weeks for Alex, so I'll go through these. But as I'm talking today, any questions you all have, this is really just a kind of a state of the industry. Ask your questions, anything that you guys have today, I'm going to be going through. So as they come through in the chat or in the Q&A, I'll make sure to answer those as we're going through them. Before we get into that, though, just a quick couple of events that are coming up to highlight next week. So if you are a new investor, we have a new investor summit on April 16th, so next Thursday, in our office in Nashville, free to attend. And that's really a session that is a full day that's designed to teach you as much as we can about the industry and about getting into the space and how to do so successfully. So if you haven't been to one of those, great opportunity here in Nashville. There's still time for you to sign up for that. The next day, on Friday, April 17th, we have a Pro Series focused on Linehaul. We're going to have several different contractors talking about the state of Linehaul, and that's really an event that's focused on contractors. So if you are a contractor in the Linehaul space, that's an event for you. Again, it's free. You're welcome to attend if you're not a contractor, but if you're here for that new investor summit, I'd encourage you to stay for that next day, next Friday as well. But both of those events, if you go to routeconsultant.com and you go to our events page, you can register for either one of those. And again, they're both free to attend.
And I'll be there, so that's
Alex will be there. That's right. Alex is one of those contractors that will be speaking. So if you want to meet Alex in person, that's a great opportunity to do so at the Linehaul Pro Series next week. Okay, so for today, like I said, I'm going to focus, at least at the beginning, on some of the questions that I've seen people ask the most recently. So Alex, I'm going to start with one that is very an expense that's very apparent right now, where fuel prices are skyrocketing with everything that's happening overseas. And this is a transportation-based business where fuel is one of our largest expenses. So how does this affect your Linehaul operations, and what do you have to do to kind of handle that expense?
Yeah, sure. So everybody's been looking at gas prices and diesel prices across the country. Gas prices has probably gone up, a buck to a buck 25. Diesel prices have actually gone up even higher. I think I've seen on my settlement statements guys paying north of $6 a gallon for diesel prices, which is quite a shock. Luckily for us, we're kind of indemnified from those shocks because of the way the contract works. So if you actually go into your contract and go into Schedule C, there is a fuel table there, okay? And they're aggregated by 10-cent increments. And it shows you how much you're going to get reimbursed at each fuel point. So for example, if diesel is sitting at 5.65 a gallon, which I did hit for a couple of my tractors last week, I got reimbursed at 63.85 cents per mile on those. Okay. So the way it works is that if you go into Schedule C, you'll see this big table. The first 17.7 cents of your fuel reimbursement is actually embedded into your VMR. So we have two components of your settlement statement. You have the mileage plus and you have the VMR. That first 17.7 cents is included in there. And then starting at I believe it's 255. I'm actually looking at the contract right now. 255, you start getting increases above that 17.7 cents that starts triggering or starts reimbursing you at those higher rates. So the thing to think about is that FedEx assumes the entire fleet is getting 6.993 miles to the gallon. So if your tractors are actually doing better than that, then you're actually making a little bit of money off of FedEx. What that is, you can do the calculation yourself, but you want to figure what you want to do is you want to have your fleet above 7 miles to the gallon is a nice round number. So if your trucks are doing that, then you're actually making money on the settlement statement. So for us, and which is nice, is that we're indemnified. Now, what does this mean for your contract or for your revenue and expenses? So you're going to have higher revenue this year because fuel is up, because FedEx is paying you a higher reimbursement. So if you think about, earlier in the year, you might have been getting reimbursed at 3.45 a gallon. That's 32 cents. Now, if you're getting 6.55 or 6.65, what we were saying, that's 68 cents per mile. So you're going to be seeing a significant increase in your revenue. But at the same time, remember, you're paying for that gas, so you're going to see a significant increase in your expenses as well. Now, what you want to dive into is making sure that the percentages that you were paying or that you were generating before are the same as you're generating now. And a good way to, a good rule of thumb is that fuel should average around 20% of your overall revenue. Okay. So that's just a really good rule of thumb there, assuming that you're getting 7 miles to the gallon. If you're getting better than 7 miles to the gallon, then obviously that percentage of fuel is going to decrease and, the increase is going to go to your bottom line. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I think you called out a lot of important things. First, in general, not every industry is shielded from this expense in the way that FedEx shields their contractors from it. There's a lot of industries that are struggling a lot. I mean, FedEx is just eating a lot of expense. It's not like they're getting paid more to.
Well, actually, they just announced a fuel surcharge going into effect for the rest of the year.
Okay, so there is that.
They followed suit with Amazon and UPS on that fuel surcharge. But where you're actually going to see it, unfortunately, you're going to see it in maintenance costs. So the price of repair parts, the price of tires are going to go up.
Got it. So there will be some kind of.
Your drivers are going to start complaining that, fuel is eating into their transit times to get to work, and they're going to probably start asking you for pay raises. Now, my company has a policy that we don't do pay raises intra-year. We do pay raises once a year. And that's a reflection of when we get the new contract. So I get the new contract in late July, early August. I review it. I do my calculations. And then I announce new pay raises for my employees that go into effect in the third quarter of the calendar year.
Okay, that makes sense. One of the things you touched on it, but the fuel rate, does it update weekly or in real time that FedEx pays
So
you?
it doesn't. It doesn't update in real time, and it doesn't match the settlement statement, the weeks of the settlement statement. So fuel is updated every Monday. So if you bought expensive gas uh, on a Friday or a Thursday, you're not going to calculate or capture that updated fuel reimbursement. But at the same time, if fuel decreases through the week, you're going to get reimbursed at that higher rate that's calculated on Mondays.
Okay.
These are all questions that the reason why I got this information um, came through talking to the PGH teams at Orlando. So really highly encourage you all to go to Orlando because all the different organizations that support us in the FedEx universe that come out of PGH, they're going to be there. So there is a fuel team where you can learn all this information. So really highly encourage you guys to go there. You can talk to the field team. They'll tell you what the embedded portion is and your variable mileage rate. They'll tell you what the assumption is for the fleet efficiency, and they'll also talk to you about, or they will explain to you when when the price is set.
Yeah. Another of the things that you called out there that I think is important is yes, FedEx shields your costs, but that doesn't mean you should just assume that you're doing fine from a fuel expense line. So it's continuing to look at both the percentage of revenue that fuel is costing you, but also I do think it's a really important call out that not everybody understands on the mile per gallon side per tractor. You were actually just showing me how you track it per tractor to make sure that there's none that are kind of jumping out as a problem, or if they are, you see it and you try to figure out what the issue is, and before it's really hurting your bottom line.
One of the areas that can really hurt you is idle time. Because if your tractors are idle and they're burning gas, now obviously they burn gas at a much lower rate than when they're driving, but FedEx doesn't compensate us for idle time. So if you're running teams, you want your drivers using their APUs instead of using the engine to heat or cool the tractor. And then if you're running solos and day cabs, you want to try to minimize the amount of idle time that you have. So you want to be, so look at your spots, look at your bumps, make sure that your drivers are, one, being efficient in doing their pre-trip inspection, then going into the yard, grabbing their sets, doing a pre-trip inspection on your set, and then getting on the road and minimizing that amount of idle time. And then when they're at the bump, if you're finding yourself waiting, or if you're finding that your drivers are waiting for long periods of time, then you need to talk to FedEx and say, hey, are we having an engineering problem, or is there a problem coming from the other side? Because you want to minimize the amount of idle time, because idle time is a cost center.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. I'll leave fuel for now. If other people have questions about that and how to think about the business, I'll also say Linehaul is a little bit different than P&D in terms of how you're shielded. FedEx does pay for fuel that does adjust weekly with P&D, but with the Linehaul contracts, you don't really negotiate your contracts. You don't negotiate the categories of your contracts. With P&D, you do. So there are some people that have a higher fuel rate than others just based on the way they negotiated their contract, and it can have more or less impact on their bottom line. But if anybody has a question on that, I can go into it, but just know that Linehaul, it's a little bit more stable than what you might see from a P&D contract. Okay, so the other thing I get all the time now, the biggest thing a lot of people are thinking about when it comes to FedEx is 2.0 and Express. So we know it has a big impact on the P&D space, but when it comes to Linehaul, have you seen much impact or change, or do you expect much impact or change?
So what we're seeing first of all, there hasn't been any cannibalization of routes. If anything, we're seeing more routes coming out. A lot of it's coming at the night. So what you're seeing is, one, we're getting asked to do airport runs. So if you're in a network 2.0 hub area or station, you're going to be asked to drive to airports and pick up stuff that's coming in off the airports. A lot of times it's pharmaceuticals. We're also doing, and then you're seeing a lot more night runs coming out. There might be shorter, because a lot of the express stations are in the hub area, but they haven't typically been fed into the hub area. But we're seeing a lot more runs coming out of that. So if anything, I'm saying, we're not picking up a whole lot of team runs coming out of Network 2.0, but we're seeing a lot of over, hub area work in the evenings. And so you might be asked to do, go sweep a bunch of different state FedEx Express facilities. You might go out and go back and then go back out and go back and go back out and go back and bring in 3 different trailers from 3 different locations so that the express package volume can be brought into the network and then redistributed the next day. Now, long term, I think as FedEx looks at their network, there will be opportunities where they can say, well, we normally used to fly this from point A to point B, but we can save ourselves 300 or 400 million in airport and airline costs or in airplane costs, and maybe we can actually run that on a tractor some location. So, for example, I've done some test runs from Memphis to Dulles Airport, to see if I could make the sort times in order to deliver stuff that was coming in internationally into the Memphis Air Hub and then get it up to Dulles in time for distribution.
Did you make it?
I made it most days, not always. It's a long run, and we have a definite time to make it, and if there's traffic or stuff like that. But I mean, at the same time, you might have a ground halt due to air traffic reasons, due to bad weather. So there's a lot of different ways that FedEx can look at this. It was a test. I do know of other contractors who are doing similar tests in other areas of the market. And then they've been seeing a lot more 2.0 volume of picking up stuff from the airports and then bringing that volume into the hub so it can get resorted and sent out on the P&D vans.
Okay. So, there's more opportunities. You said it, but do you think there will be any reason that this causes there to be an elimination of any runs or routes?
No, I mean, I think the only way that you'll see elimination of routes is one, we lose customers.
Yeah.
And obviously there's always a big food fight between UPS and FedEx about big customers. What we have seen lately is more customers leaving UPS to come to FedEx. That has a lot to do with the contract that the Teamsters put in place with UPS. If you looked at their most recent quarterly reports, their margins are compressing, and so they're looking for ways to either reduce headcount or eliminate some of the more unprofitable customers. And FedEx has actually been picking up. I mean, we picked up 20% greater volume from Amazon for incompatibles or large packages, which is great for Linehaul because I don't have to deliver them to the next, to somebody's house. Now, P&D, they're probably complaining, left and right, but for us, it's been great.
Yeah.
I mean, we're estimating that it's adding 300 trailers to the network a week, this additional Amazon volume, which is meaningful.
Yeah. Yeah, that'll work.
Yeah.
I think the other component of this that people hear about in terms of worrying about line haul runs going away is rail. So what's the worry there, and how is it impacting the network?
So, I mean, there is a worry. I mean, so you actually have to do some due diligence on your runs. It has a function with when is the packages have to be delivered in a certain location. Okay. And what is the runtime? So for volume that doesn't have to be in a location over within 3 days, then those opportunities can come into rail. Because if you think about it, say I have a package that I put into FedEx on a Wednesday and it needs to go from Cincinnati to California. Okay, so that's a 4-day travel time, but there's a weekend in there. So FedEx doesn't actually have to say that the package has to arrive on a Sunday. They can say it arrives on a Monday because no one's open on Sunday. And so that gives them the opportunity to actually put it on a rail, get it there on Sunday, sort the package, deliver it on Monday, and still make their time definite due dates. So the real understanding is just looking at where you are in the network and what are the runs. So those runs that go across the country and they go longer than 3 days of travel time, those are runs that they can actually put on rail at certain points in the week. And so that's something to be aware of. So it's much more effective and efficient for FedEx to pick up a package in Savannah and put it on the rail than to drive it across the country to Rialto from Savannah. Now, me and here in Memphis, I'm equidistance. I'm not perfectly equidistance, but it's a 20-hour drive time for me to get from, 30-hour drive time for me to get from Memphis to Rialto, and it's a 10-hour drive time for me to get from here to Savannah. So none of my stuff can go on a rail because it doesn't get to that location in time. So my stuff all has to drive. If you're in Chicago, if you're in St. Louis, Champaign, anything along the Mississippi Valley corridor, that stuff is not going to have the opportunity to rail. Also, stuff that goes north-south, you're never all those freight is going to be 2-day or next day, and it can't go on the rail. So think about something that's going from Atlanta to Woodbridge. That has to be driven. Also, because there's not a really effective way to go rail north-south. There's a lot of rail that goes east-west. If you look at a rail map, there's a lot of rail that goes east-west. There's not a whole lot of rail that goes north-south other than in the Mississippi Valley corridor.
Okay. And I guess logistically, would they eliminate one of those long teams, or is it like you said, where they kind of let you know, hey, you're not dispatching this week because we're putting on rail? Like
No, I mean, long term, what happens is PGH will do an engineering practice and determine if they can actually move that to rail and have cost savings. And so what happens is, depending on the volume in the market, you might get redesignated. So you might lose that Savannah to Rialto run and might pick up, say, a Savannah to Chicago run. Or if they don't have freight volume that's regular and they can't redesignate you, they'll offer you a spot on the unassigned run rotation. Or in the last case scenario, they'll spare out that tractor.
Okay.
And that's the worst case scenario.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess coming back to something that we saw FedEx pushing on probably a couple of years ago, and it's probably still part of their ambition. I know they were really trying to get rid of a lot of the spares in the network. Is that still something they're working on? Have they been successful there?
They're trying to control the spares now. So what they've done is when you want to submit the opportunity to add a spare to the network, you have to go through an approval process. Now, how they determine what is the right number of spares, I don't know. Like in Alpha Kilo, which is my main entity, I have 34 runs and I have 41 tractors. So I have very few spares in that. And I still had to get approval to go from 40 to 41 tractors. Like I had to justify why I wanted to add that additional spare. They gave it to me anyways, but it's no big deal. Now, my spot business, I happen to have 23 tractors and only 6 assigned runs. And of those 6 assigned runs, 2 of them are used for spots. So realistically, I have 19 tractors on a daily basis going out for spots and only 4 tractors that are on my A1. So that's a much harder thing. So I think what FedEx is looking to do long-term is figure out a way how they can assign spots to really dial in and grab this thing, because it's a cost function for them. If they can remove remove spare tractors from the network, it saves them money on paperwork. They don't have to do as much reporting to the DOT or the FMCSA. They can reduce headcount in their different buildings because they don't have as many people processing paperwork. The fact that we're in 2026 and we're still doing paperwork, it's a totally different story. And then the other thing is that they can give more volume to the unassigned run rotations, and they can really make sure that they're utilizing them. So I think what you're going to see is a work by the stations, because the hubs are pretty tight on how many spares they have in each hub area. But the stations, they don't really understand it. Like I've had a conversation with one of my station managers before, and I asked him, like, why did you give me a decline on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 when 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 ran the run? And he's like, well, you didn't run it with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it should take a decline. I'm like, no, but I covered the run with this other tractor. Yeah, but that's not how this works. I'm like, no, that's exactly how this works.
Yeah.
There in the stations on how assigned runs work and when you should be getting a decline and when you shouldn't be getting a decline. That's an education issue, because what you see in the stations is there's generally not a lot of line haul expertise in there.
Yeah.
So I could see, not this year, maybe in 2028 or 2029, FedEx moving and looking to have all the line haul operations and all the line haul management held at the hub area for all the stations in that hub area.
Okay. Should be interesting.
Hey guys, we just wanted to pause for a moment to invite you to our free events that are happening throughout the year. Whether you're just getting started in the logistics industry or you're looking to optimize your current operation, Route Consultant has events that are designed specifically for you. So head on over to routeconsultant.com/events or check out our show notes to register for free today. Also, while you're here, don't forget to like and subscribe to the Industry Insights with Route Consultant podcast so that you don't miss out on the stories, the advice, and the updates that are happening throughout the industry. We appreciate you being here and hope to meet you in person soon. Now let's get back to the episode.
So looking at that, looking at kind of what we've talked about, are there certain types of lanes or terminals that you're more bullish on today than you might not have been a year or two ago?
So, I mean, I do like operating in the stations. One of the stations I do like doing spots. I find that there's a lot of opportunities to double turn or to double utilize a truck in a spot market. So you can run the spots during the day or at night, depending on the customer. And then you might be able to tag on a line haul run and get your operational efficiency up. And so if you're able to run that tractor 20, 24 hours a day, you're really improving your operational efficiency. Spots are pretty lucrative if if you do the analysis on the spot and make sure that you have the right tractors there. But not all spots are equal. What FedEx is doing is assuming that they're paying you for both the miles and the pickup of the packages in one lump sum. So you actually have to do the work and actually figure out, am I getting paid enough to cover those miles? And am I getting paid for enough to cover my driver's time? Realistically, you want to be, keeping that driver's pay on a spot at around 30% of the spot revenue, and then make sure that you're also getting compensated enough to operate that tractor.
Yeah.
But, for me, if you look at where I'm located, and if you were to put a map across the United States, I operate in Olive Branch, Mississippi. I operate in Memphis, Tennessee. I'm about to grow into Nashville, Tennessee, and then I operate in Noki, which is Northern Kentucky, Independence, Kentucky. And so if you look at my map, I'm really consolidated, one, in the Mason-Dixon area, but two, all my hubs that I operate out of are close enough together that I can support my operations. So it reduces the amount of headcount I have to have that are non-productive personnel. So I don't have to have as many managers. I'm not spread across the country. All my organization is within 4 hours of each other, and so they can all support each other.
And so based on those locations, mainly Memphis, Olive Branch, all those areas, you live in the Memphis area, right?
No. No, I happen to live in Colorado, so I'm nowhere near the Memphis area. Now, when I first got into the business, I lived in Chicago, which is a whole different story. But I lived in Chicago, and I started off in Memphis, and Memphis was an 8-hour drive. I could drive it in half a day and get down there and do what I ever needed to do. Then I expanded into Noki, which was a 5-hour drive, so I was even closer to Chicago. Then I expanded into Olive Branch, and now I'm expanding into Nashville. But in the midst of that whole time, for a quality of life issue, I moved out to Colorado, where we get 300 plus days of sunshine a year. I will tell you this, even though we're close to the mountains, we don't get a whole lot of snow. We actually had more days over 60 degrees this winter than we had days in under 40 degrees. So
okay, wow.
The mountains got, some snow. We did go skiing. This is a drought year, so I'm a little bit nervous about forest fires this summer from climate change. Or climate, and I don't know what's the appropriate word. Climate.
It's not change anymore, is it? It's climate. I can't remember.
Yeah.
Climate
chaos.
Yeah.
So, we don't have a lot of snow, and I'm a little bit worried about forest fires this summer, but I love being in Colorado. I'm a big fly fisherman. I like to go mountain biking. I'm hoping to get a tag to go elk hunting this fall. So those are the things I'm looking forward to do. Especially since beef prices are through the roof. If I can get a
Increase
freezer
in
full of
profit.
elk,
Yeah.
I can eat elk for a year. My
Yeah.
4 kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you were, when you were first starting though, like how hard was it to go to a second terminal, like to expand to a second terminal?
A lot of it happens to be like, how do you want to operate? Like, I recognize what I'm good at and what I'm not good at. And, I gave very clear, now we would think about it as KPIs, but I gave very clear instructions to what my managers were responsible for, how I was going to evaluate them, and what my expectations were. So I'm a big believer in delegate. That doesn't mean I don't talk to my managers. I talk to them every morning. Every morning between 7 and 8 in the morning. I start off in Noki. It's 9 a.m. there. We usually have a call between 7 and 7:30 because by then he's gotten all my trucks out. My manager's there. Then, around 8, 8:30, when it's 9:30 Central Time, I'm having a conversation with my managers in Memphis and Olive Branch, and we're having discussions about any issues. And then throughout the day, as things come up from FedEx or we get curveballs thrown at us, we'll talk more. But I delegate maintenance and dispatching slash scheduling to my managers and safety training to them. So they're responsible. So I review all the better videos. I sign them to the drivers. I'll have discussions about whether this was something that a repeat offender, do we need to give them additional training? Looking for things about that. We do those on Mondays and Thursdays. Then my managers do in-person remedial training. They show them the video. They talk through what it is. We'll make a determination if they're getting, hands-on remedial training, if they're getting electronic remedial training. I happen to use Safety 4, which I like. And then we're also determining, are they losing is this a repeat offense and are they losing their safety bonus over it? So I give all my employees one chance to make a mistake. If it's an employee that's been with me for 5 years, he's out of he knows how I operate, and he doesn't get to like keep messing up. So he loses his safety bonus then. Mondays also is when I'm checking to look at, I go to the run assignment point statement in MGBA, and I'm looking at, did FedEx give me credit for all the runs I ran last week, or did they give me some declines? And are those declines justified, or do I need to contest those declines with FedEx? Tuesday, I'm usually catching up on maintenance reports and I'm getting prepared to do settlements, to do payroll. I do a first glance at payroll, or actually my wife does my payroll. But on Tuesday nights, I'm doing, Tuesday, I'm also doing the master class. So I spend an hour and change with you and Shelby on the phone with that. But in the afternoon, I'm getting ready to do payroll. I look at payroll, or I look at the settlement statement on Tuesday night. I send it off to my wife who handles payroll. She's my controller. She does bookkeeping and financial accounting for me and everything like that. But on Tuesday nights, I'm doing a first glance at payroll. Then I send it off to her. She runs payroll on Wednesday. We try to submit it usually around 4 p.m. on Wednesdays. And then I draft a note to my drivers that we attach to the mileage statement that we send out. So not only do we send out a pay stub that gets sent out from ADP, that's the entity I use. We send them a recapture of all the miles that they ran, so they can verify those miles are correct. And I attach a message to them. So it's my safety message for the week, and it'll cover everything from pre-trip inspections to side swipes to animal crossings, inclement weather. I spend a lot of time in inclement weather, obviously in the winter. But it's everything. And the reason why I send it out that way is because I know my drivers are going to open up their mileage statement every week to make sure that they're getting paid appropriately. And so at the bottom of the mileage statement is my message to my drivers. So Wednesday, it's reviewing payroll with my wife. Wednesday is pretty much just as a payroll day. Thursday and Friday, there's not a whole lot of work for me. I talk to my managers in the morning. Saturday's the same, not a whole lot of work. And that's how I schedule my week. And then Sunday, my managers don't call me unless we have an accident or a safety violation.
So you're adding some runs, I know, right now in Nashville. When you add, does it feel like you're adding a ton of time in your day, or does it feel like, as you grow, because you've got the right systems in place, it's just a little bit of additional time adding on to kind of your weekly plans that were already in place?
I mean, right now, so the things I'm doing when I'm looking at the Nashville, I'm going to stand it up. So I'm actually here in Nashville in the route consultant's office because I'm going in to introduce myself in person to the terminal. We've already had a Zoom call for me to win these runs. I'm meeting with all the personnel there. I'm introducing. I don't have a local manager yet. I haven't. I'm still debating whether or not I want to hire one. Um, because 4 runs is right on the cusp of where I find it profitable to have a manager or not. So I'm hoping that I'm hiring these drivers. I'm going to give them, you know, a couple of weeks to see how they do, and then I'm going to determine if I can use a lead driver, pay him a little bit more than I pay all my other drivers to be, the big daddy in the hub until I can grow a little bit further and actually bring in a full-time manager. If not, then I'll look to hire a manager who will also be a part-time backup driver. The work is not that hard. I mean, if you get, everybody wants to be scared of tractor files, but if you get into a system and get used to it, you just process through it. There's a step-by-step process. You do your LHO 35, you do your LHO 45, you do your SEO 33. I know this is all like gobbledygook to you, but you're talking about your statement of lease, you're talking about the characteristics of the vehicle, you're talking about your fuel card, your MMR, your SF200E, which is this archaic system that FedEx utilizes to make sure that you have all the safety equipment on your vehicle that they can submit to PGH. You send your build sheets and all that kind of stuff. So I can knock out all my tractor files in one morning. And then usually what I'm waiting for is just pictures from my managers. So we've moved all the tractors. The last tractor arrived today. So I'm going to be meeting with my new team tomorrow morning, introducing myself in person to my drivers. We're going to go over like how we operate. We're going to walk through like how do we lift the dolly? We have a very specific way of doing the dolly to try to minimize workers' comp claims. We're going to talk about how we approach the dock. We have a very specific way of how we do dock pulls. FedEx likes to say, get out and look. We actually have goal T in Alpha Kilo, which is get out, look, and touch. So I require my drivers to approach the trailer on the dock doors, get out of the truck before we actually get to the trailer, verify that it's the right number, walk around to the back, make sure that the dock doors are closed. You have to you look at it, and then you have to either put your hand through, or you use your fifth wheel puller and put it through the side skirt and actually feel that the door is closed. Or depending on the hub area, Memphis actually has holes cut in the building that you actually have to reach your hand in and feel that the dock door was closed, and that prevents stock pulls in my company. Then we talk about making sure that once you've hooked up that set and hooked up that dolly, you're taking pictures of that dolly to confirm that you've actually closed the pintle hook and you've hooked up your safety trains correctly. So it's just like walking through all the processes and procedures. I'm a very big process and procedures guy, and I train my managers to be the same way. I hold them accountable for making sure that the drivers are doing the right thing at every point. We're really big on pre-trip inspections. I give my drivers attaboys and give them awards for catching faults on trailers that get delivered to them at the bumps. So, they're all trying to do pre-trip inspections at the bumps to make sure that we are getting good equipment, so that we don't get DOT violations or CSA violations when we're back on the road going through the way stations.
Got it. So you've put all these systems in place. You've done a great job of growing, and people will be encouraged and think about how they can grow. But what are some mistakes you've seen people do when they try to grow too fast?
Well, I mean, so the biggest problem that a lot of guys get into when they grow too fast is they don't have those processes and procedures in place, or they assume where they're growing that the manager is going to know what he's doing. And a lot of times, the manager doesn't understand that safety is your number one priority, not revenue, it's safety. Because if you can't keep that safety score at tier 4 or a minimum at tier 3, but your goal should be tier 4, then you're not going to be able to grow. And just to give you an idea, safety is such a huge component I just went through the bid process for some runs down in Memphis. And I learned that, somebody bid over 20,000 points on a run. I bid 8,000. Actually, I bid 7,700 and won the run because I was tier 4 safety and the other guy was tier 2.
Okay. Yeah. That'll do it. Tier 2 will do it.
Big difference.
Yeah.
Even the difference between tier 3 and tier 4, it makes a very, very big difference.
Yeah. I think a lot of people still don't realize how, like, points alone does not win you a run. And
not in this day and age. Now it's, just to give you an idea, 36% of your composite score is safety, 32% is availability, 12% is service, and then 20% is points. Everybody should be good on service, so don't worry about it. What you really need to focus is on your availability and on your safety. And everybody's availability, unless you're running a really bad fleet or have a lot of problems with recruiting, everybody's going to be at the top tier for availability. So really what the delta is going to be in that safety score. And safety is such a big component that it can overwhelm points.
Yeah. So, okay, perfect. Well, I've got a couple more questions, but if any of you in the chat have any questions, now's the time to type them in because we've only got, 15-ish minutes left. So I can keep talking the whole time, but if you have any questions, you should type them in now because otherwise we're going to run out of time. So another of the big things affecting the industry that I know a lot of people are thinking about is FedEx's 10-year replacement rule on vehicles that they rolled out and it had a timeline and they got pushed back. But can you just kind of give an update on where that stands? And then how is that rule affecting how you're thinking about buying vehicles right now?
Sure. So, on top of that whole rule, the other thing that guys should be thinking about is CARB 27, because despite the Trump administration wanting to remove a lot of the regulations that we're getting, CARB 27 is here to stay. The OEMs have made too much of an investment to develop the technology for CARB 27 that they actually want it to go into effect. What is CARB 27? CARB 27 is a requirement for us to reduce, for the trucking industry in general, to reduce the amount of diesel particulate that is emitted into the environment. And so the way that a lot of these OEMs have looked at this is that you had one of two options. You could either make your tractor a lot more efficient and it could do a lot more miles per the gallon, or you could tack on another DEF system. So for whatever reason, they decided that giving us a better engine wasn't the right option. So they're going to give us a second DEF system to us. So they're going to tack on a second DEF system. So the new trucks starting in 2027 will have two DEF systems on them back to back. That additional cost of one putting on a new DEF system and then the warranty requirement for that is probably going to add an additional $30,000 to the tractor price. So that's one thing to think about. In addition to that, FedEx is FedEx tried in the most recent contract to put in place some new technology terms or requirements. They tried to put lane keep assist in place, and they put blind spotter in place, which is your side radar. And they wanted us to move to newer trucks from, putting this 10-year life cycle. So the initial pushback that contractors convinced FedEx to do was to remove the lane keep assist, because the problem is that Freightliner was the only viable option for lane keep assist. Volvo didn't have a product that was tested yet, and nor did some of the other OEMs. So FedEx said, okay, we made a mistake. There's no used trucks on the market that have lane keep assist, and it's not a proven technology with all these different OEMs. So we are going to remove that requirement, and we're going to give contractors a minimum of 6 months notice before we put that into place. So right now is March or April. So we know that they're not going to put it into place with the new contract, but they could be announcing it in the new contract for implementation in January. But I think it's probably going to be another year before there's enough used tractors on the market that have lane keep assist. 2, blind spotter. So blind spotter wasn't an issue. Blind spotter has been a technology that tractors have been coming equipped with since 2022. The one thing I could see FedEx doing long term is requiring all new tractors added to the fleet have blind spotter on both the passenger side and on the driver side. Initially, the technology came with just blind spotter on the passenger side. Now, trucks being developed by the OEMs have blind spotter on both the passenger side and on the driver's side. Then the last one is the 10-year sunset on vehicles. That was initially the case. A lot of spot contractors said, well, if you're not going to give me any equity in the business, then what's the purpose of me going out and spending all this money on new tractors? And so FedEx walked that back until they can figure out how they can incentivize spot contractors to refresh their fleet. So there's been a lot of different discussions. You might have a Schedule B1 for line haul and a Schedule B2 for spots, but they don't know how to handle a contractor that runs both spots and line haul and makes those tractors interchangeable. So it's going to be a little bit of a while. They do definitely want us to refresh the fleet and have nicer trucks on the road. It's a marketing issue for them, as well as an operational efficiency. The newer the truck is, the better fuel efficiency it has. And so FedEx can raise that fleet fuel efficiency target. When is that going to happen? Maybe the day that FedEx decides to put spots on the A1. So
yeah.
So for me, what I'm doing is I have a fleet replacement strategy. So I look at two things. I try to run my solo tractors at a minimum for 7 years or 750,000 miles. If you do the math, 750,000 miles is a tractor that runs, 6 years at 150,000 miles per year. I have some runs that do that. What I generally do is I'll run them at a high mileage for a number of years, and then I'll move them into a shorter run. But my goal is, I'm looking to replace those tractors at around 7 years or 750,000 miles, because at that point, the value of the tractor has been depreciated to zero, or as close to zero as possible. So I have limited dividend depreciation recapture. My team trucks is a different story. I don't like to run team trucks that don't have warranty on them. So I replace my team trucks every 2 to 2.5 years. So this year, I placed an order for, I'm replacing 5 day cabs and 4 team trucks. Next year, my plan is to replace 6 day cabs and 2 team trucks. I've already placed the order for the day cabs. They're actually going into manufacture in December with delivery in January or February. The reason why is that they're still grandfathered in pre-CARB 27, so they'll be cheaper trucks, even though I'm taking delivery of them in 2027. I'm still negotiating for 2 team trucks that will go into production in December with delivery in January. Wish me luck there.
Yeah. I know everybody's trying to get ahead of that and CARB in general. So you're not alone there. Okay, so a couple questions did come in that I want to get to before we run out of time. So Brian had a question here. Can you talk a little bit about your recruiting process? So do you talk to every single person that comes through? Do you delegate that all to your managers? How do you fit into that process?
Sure. So I'm big enough that I have a full-time recruiter on staff. She's my HR manager, so she handles everything from benefits to driver management files to updating my employee handbook. So she does all my advertising on Indeed. We use Indeed. And then she interviews each of the drivers. We have 12 questions that she asks the drivers to make sure that at a minimum, they're going to meet the minimum requirements for the job. One of the big ones is, hey, we're hiring for a team. This is over the road and you're not coming home at night. Oh, I thought I was interviewing for a solo driver position. That's the start. From there, then I have my managers interview the drivers. I don't get involved specifically until the driver is gotten to the point where that driver is being onboarded. And then I will interact with the driver and, welcome them to the company and talk about my expectations. But the first gatekeeper is my HR manager, then my managers. Now, that's because I'm a very large organization. I have 41 tractors. So that's a different story. For when I was a small contractor, operating at 4 trucks, I did all the recruiting myself, and I absolutely hated it. But I wasn't, I couldn't afford an HR manager. When I got to 17 trucks, I couldn't handle the volume of drivers I needed to speak to. So I actually went to a third-party vendor. At the time, Bright Flag was doing line haul recruiting, so I used Bright Flag. And then when I got to about 22 trucks, I brought on a full-time HR manager, and she's been handling my recruiting ever since. And so that's just my progression. What I try to look at is as a percentage of my revenue, I'm trying to keep my SG&A costs or my non-producing costs at below 4% of revenue. So I'm looking at my managers and my HR manager and my payroll or my controller. She was a payroll specialist. Now she's a controller. My wife, I have to give her a better title. She didn't like to be called a payroll specialist. Um, that's a bad joke. She's going to kick my butt. But you want to keep that as below 4%. So if you make $1 million a year, you can spend if your revenue is $1 million a year, you can spend $40,000 a year on SG&A costs. If you're doing $10 million a year, you can have SG&A costs of around 400,000. So that's a good target to keep yourself.
Okay. I think that's helpful. It's just a range. And I think it's helpful to understand the timeline of like when it makes sense to start to add resources. It's going to be a little bit different for everybody. And I do know some contractors that are really large and still make it a point to talk to every single person that comes through to be a part of their organization.
I am a big believer in delegating, that's how I operate. I like to have the freedom. I mean, I know of a contractor that has 88 tractors and he still does payroll himself.
Yeah. Yeah. Most of the time there's things like that the time, the value of your time versus the cost to have a vendor to help you there or just somebody internally to handle that is it's pretty easy trade-off to make, but some people want to control it.
Yeah, I mean, I do all my bookkeeping in-house, so that's a different story. A lot of other contractors will outsource bookkeeping.
Yeah. Okay, we got a couple questions here from Tony. We'll try to get to as much of it as we can in the last 10 minutes here. So his first one is, where do you see kind of the biggest opportunities or potential headwinds for the FedEx Linehaul space in particular over the next couple of years?
Well, I mean, the biggest challenge is going to be incorporating this higher truck cost because as we know with FedEx is very backwards looking. So the contract that I'm getting right now and the improvements I'm going to be getting in August on the VMR and everything like that is about 18 months delayed. So they're not going to capture that new truck price that's coming in January 2027 until probably the contract that's coming in 28, 29. So it's being very mindful of that, that the improvements that you're seeing and inflation and the experiences that we're suffering from inflation, either higher gas prices and how it interacts with diesel and your repair parts, that's not going to be captured for a little while. So it's always being mindful and digging down into your settlement statements and being eyes on your revenue and on your expenses. You should have a good mindset of what your free cash flow is on a week-to-week basis, and then be able to look at your monthly P&L as close to the end of the month as possible to figure out, okay, where am I dragging? Why am I not hitting my 20% profit margin target?
Yeah.
I mean, long term, 10, 15 years, I'm excited because maybe we'll get rid of drivers. And that takes away that headache of hiring drivers and staffing drivers and paying drivers. If we get to autonomous trucking, FedEx is not going to go out and buy a whole ton of autonomous trucks. They're going to expect us as contractors to go out and buy a bunch of autonomous trucks.
Yeah. Yeah. And who know, people ask me about that all the time. And I'm like, it's going to be a while, but even when it does happen, I would still expect them to make you responsible for the autonomous trucks.
Yeah, 100%. FedEx is in the asset light business. They want a higher return on equity and a higher ROI for their stock price, so their chief executive can get paid a higher multiple based off of the price to earnings ratio of the stock.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. A couple more here from Tony. So what are kind of the biggest either operational practices or mindsets that you see are helping profitability, scalability, and really just, I guess, what are some good operational practices or mindsets as a line haul contractor to be the most successful?
So one is you want to make sure that your managers are jumping in trucks whenever you can. Okay. So all your managers should be backup drivers. Okay. That's a big one because if you have a truck sitting, it's not making any revenue for you. So if FedEx comes calling on a Tuesday or Wednesday and says, hey, we have extra freight volume, you want to make sure that your managers are incentivized to jump in that truck and drive for you. Two, if you have a driver call off, you want to and make sure that your manager is incentivized to cover that run for him. You want to minimize the number of declines as possible. Three, if you're looking to grow, you need to guard your safety score as much as possible. Your goal should always be tier 4 safety. So make sure you put processes and procedures in place to make sure you keep that tier 4 safety. There's a lot of different ways to do it. You can follow my roadmap, you can follow somebody like Randy's roadmap, but there is a process as a procedure, but you need to make sure you get your managers to buy in and that they're holding the drivers accountable and that you have a training program in place to train the drivers throughout the year and give them constant feedback on how they're doing.
Okay. Yeah. Perfect. So Alex, what was your primary kind of initial growth strategy when you were buying routes?
So, like I said, I bought 4 runs in Memphis. Had no idea what I was doing. Picked up 2 unassigned runs very, very quickly. Still had no idea what I was doing. Got my teeth into it and started really understanding about 6 months in. I bought another business in Noki. It was 10 or 11 runs at the time. And so I expanded from Memphis to Noki, which weren't supportive of each other. And that is a regret that I have. But it did allow me to expand in 2 different markets. And from there, I've never done an acquisition that I haven't been able to pay for with the company's own money. And so what I do now when I'm looking to buy things, I'm trying to, generate enough cash in my business. And then that excess cash, I'm either putting to work into new trucks or I'm putting into work into acquiring more runs. I don't come out of pocket for anything else.
And when you're looking at a business to buy, if they've got older tractors, do you just try to buy it without those tractors? How does that affect, how does the current fleet affect things?
So if it's an older fleet, a lot of times I won't even take the tractors. The resale value of older tractors, they're going to want to try to say, oh, these tractors are worth $40,000, $50,000, $60,000. My experience is that you never get the trade-in value that they say. And so, if I don't want the fleet, if the fleet's not new enough, or I have questions about their maintenance or anything like that, I don't want the fleet. So I will say, hey, you can dispose of that fleet. Let's just reduce the purchase price from there.
Yeah.
For example, a couple of years ago, I bought 4 additional runs in Noki because there was a contractor that had to get out. For whatever reason, he had to get out. I did not take his tractors. I said, I didn't want your tractors. We negotiated a price that took away the tractor price. I think I got a great deal on it. He thinks he got a great deal on it. But at the end of the day, I paid for the entire purchase within 1 year's worth of revenue.
Got it.
And what was nice about it is that, I didn't have to add another manager because I already had managers in place. So there was economies of scale there.
Yeah. Perfect. Okay. As the last question here, are there hubs or geographies right now that you think are the best places to expand into or ones to avoid or anything like that?
Everything comes with a grain of salt. Okay. People might say, oh, I never want to operate in Woodbridge, New Jersey. Well, Woodbridge, New Jersey handles roughly probably 20 or 30% of the freight volume that comes into the FedEx network from overseas. So there's a lot of work to be done there. 2, even though there is the drivers make more money because it's more expensive to operate there, you're getting paid more to operate there. People might say, California is a terrible market because it's a regulatory nightmare to operate there. There's a lot of really, really successful contractors out of California. For you need to find out where you're comfortable, where you can get your economies of scale, and what can you do. There's growth everywhere in the market. There is no hub area that's going away. If anything, they're expanding with this Network 2.0. The hubs are going to get more volume coming in through the express network. So, everybody wants to be in Atlanta or in Marietta or in Savannah because, Savannah is great. I'm very happy where I am in Memphis, Olive Branch, Nashville, and Noki because I get a lot of economies of scale here and there's a lot of growth opportunities. I just converted one of my unassigned runs into a dedicated run on Monday. And then I just got requested to put in an RFI for 3 more growth opportunities in Memphis. I'm crossing my fingers that I'm going to get, at least one or two of those. There's opportunities in the Louisiana market. There's opportunities, for me, if I was to continue to look to expand, I'm looking to kind of fill in my map. I'm kind of good with the hubs I'm in right now. There's no hubs that are kind of, I think there's a lot more opportunities for me to move down towards the Gulf. So I'm going to look at, trying to grow into the stations that support the Memphis, Olive Branch, Nashville market, or I might try to move into the stations that support the Noki market, like Louisville or Lexington, or some of the stations like Dayton. So for me, those are what I'm trying to do now is trying to continue to consolidate and beef up in the areas that I'm in and monetize and really concentrate on those managers so I don't have to hire more managers. I don't want dead wood. I want as much productive personnel in my company as possible. I don't want to have people who are not adding to my bottom line.
Yeah. Well, as you can tell, there is a lot to talk about here. And the funny thing is, any of these topics could have probably been hour-long presentations. We skimmed through some things that are, hugely important in this industry that I was trying to cover at a high level. But if these are things you're thinking about, if you're either in the Linehaul space already or you are trying to learn more about this space, I mentioned at the beginning, but for those who weren't here, we have 2 events next week that are completely free to attend. The one on Thursday is targeted for new investors trying to, figure out if this is the right space for them, go through everything they need to know about an acquisition. And the event on Friday is about what's going on in the Linehaul space and how to be successful. You're going to learn everything from P&Ls and the right way to focus on your profitability, on what it means to build an operational playbook across multiple terminals, how to decide when you're going to consolidate or exit a space like Alex is talking about here, and then really the future of logistics and how you can make a strategy for the next 3 to 5 years, along with hearing from some of the most important partners and vendors that if you're not already working with somebody of this type, you're missing out. It's one of those things where a lot of times we find that people try to do everything themselves and can grow the most and be the most successful once you give up some of those things in your day to a vendor or a partner that can do it all much more efficiently and at a pretty good price. And so if you haven't registered for those, again, those are completely free to attend next week, and we would love to see you there. Alex will be there. So if you just want to meet him in person, it's still a good opportunity to do that.
I swear, my head is not that shiny. So, come out and see us on Friday. I'll be there. As Josh mentioned, I'm giving a presentation on P&L and like how to structure your finances and just what you should be targeting for the different metrics in your P&L. And then I'm also going to talk about, when to grow, when to consolidate, when to exit, though I've never exited yet, but Josh can also help me when's the right time to exit. And then we're also going to have, probably who I think is one of the experts, a guy named Randy Keurig. He's going to talk about how do you run a multi-state operation. And then Steve Crawford, who is salt of the earth, is going to talk about recruiting. We have a guy talking about maintenance and, software systems. We're going to have workers' comp conversations. And so definitely come out. This is a great opportunity to interact in a very small group with some industry experts. And I'm not the subject matter expert. There's a lot of other guys who are, just as good as I am in this space. And so you're going to have the opportunity to meet with them as well.
Yeah. So Alex, thank you so much for being here. Thanks everybody for joining live, and hopefully we will see many of you next week.
Sounds good. Look forward to it. Bye.
See ya.